All right, thanks so much for watching Harvest Online. We're so glad you're here. We would love for you to go to our Facebook and Instagram page, harvest.247. Follow and like our page, also on our YouTube channel that you're watching on. We would love for you to do that as well. If you'd like to partner with us financially, we would love for you to go to harvest247.org. You can give there. We would love for you to do that. We'd be honored if you would do that as well. And we just want you to know that Harvest's purpose and existence is so that all people may know Jesus and grow with him. We are in the middle of a series called Under Pressure. And basically the purpose of the series is this, is that we all face pressures at times in our life, and we're all living under pressure. And in today's society, we're living under pressure a lot. And so if we're trying to follow Jesus, what is it that we do? And so we have been working through some stories in the Old Testament of people who also lived under pressure. People who had to face their past, people who had to risk it, like Esther last week. And we have been talking about what did they do when they were living under pressure and how can we glean from them. And so today, we're going to talk about someone that you may have never heard a story of, or you may have never heard a sermon about, Benaiah. Now, if you were to think about some predatory animals, some things that animals that you wouldn't want to chase after. I'm sure that you'd probably put some things like a king cobra on that list, maybe a rhino on that list, maybe some sort of lizard, one of the big lizards that live out in the Far East, and you would probably put a tiger on that list. And I would assume that you would probably put a lion on that list, that if you had your choice to chase any animal at any day, at any time, you would not choose a lion, and for obvious reasons. Now, I love lions. It's one of my favorite animals, probably my favorite animal in the world, after Uga, the UGA mascot, but it's one of my favorite animals, and I would love to hold a baby lion, but holding a baby lion, taking pictures of lions in the wild, or visiting them at the zoo is different than making an intentional choice to chase them, because oftentimes we stay in our comfort zones. Well, Benaiah is a man who had a scenario, had a choice, and he intentionally chose to chase a lion, not just chase it, but into a pit, and not just in a pit, but on a snowy day. So not only am I chasing it into a pit where there's only one way out, but the only way out, I have to deal with snow that I could slip and fall. So when we talk about Benaiah, we're talking about like a man's man, okay? We're talking about a guy that is fearless. And so I'm excited to share this story with you, and excited to talk about some principles that we can glean from Benaiah's life about how do we live under pressure. And so we're going to just hop right in today, 1 Samuel 23, 20 through 21, and this is what it says. And Benaiah, the son of Jehoiah, was a valiant man of Kabzeel, a doer of great deeds. He struck down 2 Ariels of Moab. He also went down and struck down a lion in a pit on a day when snow had fallen. I mean, come on. And he struck down an Egyptian, a handsome man. The Egyptian had a spear in his hand, but Benaiah went down to him with a staff and snatched the spear out of the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. So we are talking about a warrior, a battle-tested warrior when we're talking about Benaiah. Now, here's the thing when you read this passage of Scripture, okay? This is a man that puts himself in situations that are very compromising. As a matter of fact, he puts himself in situations that don't seem like the right situations. I mean, you're not going to go by yourself and chase a lion into a pit. And then not only that, but you're going to chase after an Egyptian who has a spear, but you don't have a spear, but ultimately overtake him and kill him with his own spear. So we are talking about that kind of guy. Now, here's one thing that I want to say. God strategically positions us in the right place at the right time. So in all of these scenarios, Benaiah was in the right place at the right time. But here's the thing. The right place, I want you to get this, often seems like the wrong place, and the right time often seems like the wrong time. We know from the outcome Benaiah was in the right place at the right time, but if we were to look at these scenarios, it would seem as though he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Because for most of us, there's never a good time to come face to face with a lion. And coming face to face with a lion, trapped in a pit on a snowy day, doesn't seem like the right place either for Benaiah. But here's the thing. 2 verses later, King David, makes Benaiah head of his bodyguards. So can you imagine King David reading the resumes for the person who's going to lead his bodyguards? And as he is reading through all of these resumes and these people, he comes to Benaiah. Now, Benaiah doesn't have any training. Benaiah hasn't been to school to be a bodyguard. Benaiah doesn't have any of that. But as David begins to read his resume, David comes out and says, oh, here's a guy who went after an Egyptian, who he didn't have a spear. He took the Egyptian spear and killed him. Here's a guy who chased after a lion in a pit on a snowy day and lived to tell about it. I'm imagining that David's looking at the resume and say, sold, he's going to be head of my bodyguard. Because here's what we know about David. David is just like Benaiah. As crazy as it seems that Benaiah went and chased a lion in a pit on a snowy day and killed the Egyptian without a spear by using his own spear, David did the same thing. He went after a giant with a sling and a stone, and he cut the giant's head off with his own sword. So David's reading the resume of Benaiah and saying, this is my kind of guy. Like, this is my dude, because I'm like this too. The point is this, is that God leveraged an inopportune meeting at an inopportune time to bless Benaiah with a job for working with the king. God-given opportunities often come disguised as man-eating lions. Oftentimes, the God-given opportunity is the thing that seems so scary. Oftentimes, the thing that God is calling us to is also the thing that could end our life. Except for the fact that God is in control and He's calling us to it. I mean, some of my greatest opportunities have been the scariest lions. It started back when I moved from Georgia to Dallas without knowing anybody, to go to seminary. Didn't have a job, didn't have a place to stay before the week I was supposed to leave. Planting a church in my late 20s. I'd never planted a church before, had no idea what we were doing. We didn't even have a sending organization. But what a great opportunity it was to plant a new church. Moving to an obscure mountain town in Bailey, Colorado to be a pastor. We were southern people. We'd never been in the mountains. As a matter of fact, I'm afraid of heights. And I'm living at 8,200 feet. We can't drive in the snow, and it snows literally for 6 months out of the year. We've never been in the mountains, never been a pastor before, and we're like 2,000 miles away from all of our family, and yet we're rolling. But what a great opportunity, and God did some amazing things. Traveling to an ISIS-infiltrated area in Mindanao. Martial law was guarding the whole island just to train church planters. Leaving a good situation in Colorado to move to South Carolina because that's what God calls to do. And even facing disappointment and failure to birth a new dream and a new vision to launch Harvest. Listen, most of my greatest opportunities have been the scariest lions because God-given opportunities come disguised as man-eating lions. And I'm not going to lie to you. There have been sleepless nights along the way. There have been financial loss along the way. We've had to pick ourselves up from failure. We've had to wrestle with changing and transitions and having more kids and all those types of things. And when I look back, it hasn't always been easy, but the journey of staring in the eyes of lions have always birthed the greatest opportunities. And for Benaiah, it's the same. If he hadn't had that on his resume, he may not have been able to work for the king, but he did because he was willing to stare in the face of a lion in a pit on a snowy day, and it resonated with David, and God used it as an opportunity to move Benaiah forward. And so here's kind of the main point of the sermon. When chasing a dream, you have to quit living as if the goal is to arrive safely at death. Now that seems intense. But so many of us believe that the end goal of our life, or we live like it. We may not believe this, but we live like the end goal of our life is to be on our deathbed and say, I've arrived here safely. Woo! No. We might know that that is not the end goal of our life, but we live like it. There's a song by a 90s band, the Counting Crows, and I love this verse in it. It says, we talk like lions, but we sacrifice like lambs. So many of us talk like lions, but we sacrifice like lambs. Benaiah stared the face of the lion, lived like a lion. Because here's the thing, when chasing a dream, you have to quit living as if the goal is to arrive safely at death. Second, we can suffer from regret of action or regret of inaction. Regret of action is theologically called the sin of commission. It's the sin of commission. It's saying, I'm going to act because I'm commissioned to do so. The regret of inaction is theologically called the sin of omission. It's, I'm called to do it, but I'm not going to do it. Okay? So action and inaction both have consequences. They both have risks. There are some times that we act and we suffer from acting. We do what God's called us to do, and yet we suffer from doing what God's called us to do. Look throughout the entire Bible. Everybody that followed Jesus, they suffered in some way. So this narrative that if you follow Jesus, your life is going to be great. No, it's not going to be, because you're fighting against an enemy. You're pushing back forces of darkness. The regret of inaction is the sin of omission, and we regret it has consequences by not acting. It's just like we talked about with Esther last week. Her inaction was greater than her action. Her inaction had more consequences than if she acted. Because if she didn't act, it impacted a whole nation. If she acted, it impacted her. And so what we have is we can suffer from regret of action or inaction. We can do something for the Lord, absolutely know that we were in the right spot to do it, and yet if the end result didn't come out the way we want to, we can be like, man, I regret ever doing that. But the greatest regret is arriving at our deathbed and thinking about all the things that we didn't do. Risk it. If you die, right? We can suffer from regret from action or the regret of inaction. We have suffered from sins of commission for far too long in the church. A holiness by subtraction, meaning a long list of do's and don'ts. You're holy if you don't do this, if you don't do this, if you don't do this, if you don't do this. I don't remember the saying, but you don't smoke and you don't drink and you don't date girls that do, or something like that, right? In the church, we are known by what we are against more than what we are for. Because we think holiness is a product of subtracting things from our life. As we subtract more and more things from our life, the more holy we become. However, I think God is more concerned with sins of omission, the things that we could have done, the things that we should have done, but we didn't do. At the end of our life, God's going to say, well done, good and faithful servant. Well, you're not good and faithful if you're not doing anything. If you do nothing with your life, you're not faithful with anything. God calls us to do things. He wants us to step forward. He wants us to take risks. He wants us to do those types of things. And chase lions in pits on snowy days, because we can suffer the regret of action or the regret of inaction. There's a phrase, no guts, no glory. If we live our life just by subtraction, and we try to obtain holiness by just subtracting things from our life. We were created for more than that. That is a miserable existence. Coming to the next thing of, well, I can't do this if I want to be, well, I can't do this if I'm going to be holy. And just worrying about all the things that we need to subtract from our life. We were created for more than that. We, me and you, were created to chase lions for the glory of God and to the glory of God. We were created to put ourselves and allow God to put ourselves in opportune times and in inopportune places so that God could show us it was actually the right time and the exact right place. When chasing a dream, you and I have to quit living as if arriving safely at death is the end goal. Because it's not. And I have to live my life and think that when I'm on my deathbed and I look back, am I going to regret acting or am I going to regret inacting? Am I going to look back and be like, man, I wish I would have never taken that risk. I wish I would have never tried that. I wish I would have never. No, I'm not. I'm going to look back and say, I'm glad I tried it. Did it fail? Sure, it failed. If I die, I die. But I get one shot and you get one shot. We need to stop applauding lion chasers from the sidelines. People who face their fears and chase dreams are just like us. They're scared, they're insecure. Talk to anybody. Talk to anybody. I'll take first pastor. Talk to any pastor. We might stand up on a Sunday morning and we might exude all the confidence in the world and encourage people. But man, I'm going to tell you what, you know why? Because Sunday morning is the easiest day of our week. Most pastors are fearful and insecure. There's never enough volunteers. There's never enough giving. There's never enough money, to fix the things. There's never enough staff to do the things that you want to do. Never. And it doesn't matter how big the church is. It's all the same. Go ask a CEO. We applaud him. Oh, the risk taker. Oh, Elon Musk or whatever. Do you know how many sleepless nights he's had? How many times he's failed? We got to stop applauding lion chasers from the sidelines. Because these people are people that are cornered by lions. They have sleepless nights. They have doubts. They feel ill-prepared. And they hand in their resignation, fearful, or bought the plane ticket. Like, they've thought every single week, I'm going to quit. I want to just go to an island. But most of these people have experienced tremendous ups and tremendous downs. I can speak from experience. As high as my mountaintops have been or as low as my valleys have been. And that's just what you live with. And God grows you in the valley so that when you get to the mountaintop, you understand how to handle it. You understand how to embrace it. I tell my boys all the time, you learn how to win by learning how to lose. When you can learn how to lose, and you can learn how to lose gracefully, honorably, then you can learn how to win. Gracefully and honorably. The reality is that not every lion chase ends with the skin on the wall. But what sets lion chasers apart isn't the outcome. It's the courage to chase a God-sized dream. That's the difference between lion chasers and people who applaud them from the sidelines. Has nothing to do with failure. It has nothing to do with not being afraid. It has nothing to do with that. It's all the ability to have the courage to chase a God-sized dream. Now, my favorite person in all of history is a man by the name of Winston Churchill. He was the Prime Minister of Britain during World War II. And actually, there's a 3-volume set about Winston Churchill. I have one of them. Each of them is like 900 pages long. And the title of the 3-volume set is called The Last Lion. Looking at him and saying, this is the last lion that has ever faced the earth. And this is one of his quotes, and I love it. He says this, he says, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. but it is the courage to continue that counts. I'd say absolutely. You can be successful, but it doesn't last a lifetime. And you can fail, and it doesn't take you out for a lifetime. But the thing that sets apart lion chasers versus those that applaud them from the sidelines is the courage to take a step and continue. And it makes all of the difference, because here's the deal. When chasing a dream, you have to quit living life as if the goal is to arrive safely at death. Most of us are afraid of failure, but we've never truly experienced it. Could we be a people that live under pressure by chasing the pressure and not being crushed by it? Like, what if you just changed your mind and said, you know what? Pressure's a privilege. I'm going to chase it instead of being intimidated by it. I'm going to go after it instead of being intimidated by it. I'm going to look at it in the face instead of running from it. Can we grow to be a people that are compelled to live courageously in the face of uncertainty? So, some questions. What lion do you have a problem taming? Is it defying the odds? People looking around, saying you can't do it? And if I take a step, I'm either going to prove them wrong or I'm going to validate it? What would be so bad about validating that you can't do it? What if by not doing it, you actually grow? And you actually have a better relationship with God? And you experience more of God's grace and mercy? Is it facing fears? Is that a lion? I just don't want to face my fears. It's too hard. It's too scary. I have to go back to that place like Moses did. I have to go back to Egypt to do that. Is it reframing problems? Is it seeing problems as opportunities? Do you have a problem reframing problems? Looking at them from a different perspective? And saying that's a problem, but it's also an opportunity? Is it embracing uncertainty? But what if this happens? But what if that happens? Well, what if it happens? What if your worst fear comes true? What if you have to look at that lion in the face and you're like, man, I went into this new adventure uncertain because I was afraid this was going to happen, and now it's happened, and now what? What if you have to do that? Is it taking a risk? Like I said last week, risk is the price you pay for opportunity. Is it taking a risk? Is that the lion? I just don't want to take a risk. Is it seizing opportunities? Is it looking foolish in front of a group of people? You know, most people don't want to get up and talk in front of people because they don't want to look foolish. We were just at a wedding. It was a pretty, as we would say, bougie wedding. So it was a wedding, you know. And all these people, there's like 500 people there. They're all dressed beautifully and all of these types of things. And there's a part at the end of the wedding where the wedding party and the husband and wife, the new husband and wife said, hey, we want to offer communion for everyone. And what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to stand up and walk down the aisle and do it. And so you have these people walking down the aisle. They're all dressed up, dressed to the nines. A lot of them had a lot of money. And they're having to take the bread and dip it into the cup. And as I was watching these people come down the aisle, I noticed something. They were all insecure. They would stand there and they'd be all, yeah, I'm awesome. But then when they went to do the bread, they would take a little piece of bread and barely dip it in the cup. Why? Because I don't want to get wine or grape juice, because they served wine with it, and grape juice on my clothes. And I noticed that people would put the bread with the juice in their mouth and they would not chew until they got back to their seat. Many of them, especially women. And I'm sitting there thinking, here's all these beautiful people and all these beautiful gowns and all of these things. But guess what? They're so afraid of looking foolish in front of people. What if I dropped it on my tie or I was chewing on my way back and it didn't look good? And I'm sitting there thinking, are we afraid to look foolish? When chasing a dream, Benaiah tells us you have to quit living as if the goal is to arrive safely at death. And that if you were to fast forward to your deathbed and you look back, what's the regret you're going to have? What's the sin of omission that you're going to have? What's the regret? Are you ready to regret taking a step or not regret not taking the step? Because sometimes God puts us in places that seem like the wrong place and at the wrong time that are actually the right place at the right time. And here's the thing, if there's anybody that knows anything about lions, it's Jesus, because he is the Lion from the tribe of Judah. In The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, Aslan is a lion, and he portrays the Jesus figure. He actually gets sacrificed for the good of everyone, and all of those types of things. And early in the movie, there's this great line, and they're talking about Aslan, and the 4 children have not seen Aslan yet, and they say, well, is he good? Like, is he all right? Should we be afraid of him? And the answer is this: Aslan, he isn't safe, but he's good. Jesus isn't safe, but he's good. What he calls you to isn't safe, but it's good. And he's faithful. Chasing Jesus is never going to lead you into safety, but your journey will be oh so good. And my invitation for you is this, is that you've never placed your faith in Christ, if you've never believed in him. It's as simple as just saying, hey, I admit that I'm a sinner. I believe, Jesus, that you're the Son of God, and I'm going to confess my sins and ask you to come into my heart. It's as simple as that. And if you're watching a Harvest Home, your Harvest Home leader would love to lead you in that prayer. And if you're watching online and you're not in a Harvest Home, you can message us or you can text this number right here, and we would love to have a conversation with you about believing in Jesus. Because here's the thing. When chasing a dream, you have to quit living as if the goal of life is to arrive safely at death. When you're under pressure, you have to quit living as if the goal of life is to arrive safely at death. Benaiah shows us that. King David shows us that. And Jesus calls us to things that aren't safe, but they're good. God bless you.